Welcome, everybody. My name is Ara Topouzian. I'm the Executive Director for Michigan Venture Capital Association. And we welcome you today to sort of our ongoing webinar series that we've been hosting here at MVCA. These virtual series have been very beneficial and provided some great information and have given us the ability to really expand our reach to talk to a lot of different people. So today I am joined by three experienced founders here in Michigan that have really unique businesses, and they're going to talk about them very shortly. And we're going to talk to them not just about this current crisis, but really a little bit more about their business and how they're thinking strategically, kind of moving down the road. And so again, this is being recorded, and we will put this on our YouTube channel afterward. But let's start with Amy Chambers. Amy has over 25 years of experience working in the healthcare industry. She is, by the way, the Chief Operating Officer of HealthBridge. And she's been in both the employee benefits arena as an attorney and also as a business builder. Prior to HealthBridge, Amy held roles as General Counsel and Executive Vice President of Product Development at RespondWell, General Counsel and Chief Marketing Officer for the largest U.S. radiology practice, and VP of Product Development for Priority Health, one of Michigan's leading health insurance plans. Amy is the author of the great American novel HSA is for Dummies, and holds a JD from the University of Michigan Law School and a BA from University of Chicago. Amy, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
We also have Matthew Johnson Roberson, who is the founder of Refraction AI. Matt is a co-founder and CEO. He has worked in robotics since the first Dartmouth Grand Challenge in 2004. He is also a tenured associate professor of robotics at the University of Michigan College of Engineering. He has received a BS from Carnegie Mellon University and a PhD from the University of Sydney. He has held prior postdoctoral appointments with the Center for Autonomous Systems, CAS, and KTH Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, and the Australian Center for Field Robotics. Matt, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Then we have Molly McFarland. She is founder and CRO, which is Chief Revenue Officer, I really do like that, of AdAdapt. So Molly has spent the last 12 years designing and executing sales and marketing strategy for tech startups. Before founding AdAdapt, she held the position of Director of Marketing at I'm going to have trouble with this. Amplifinity. Wow. Where she provided strategy and support for a successful sales team, formed strategic partnerships, and assisted in raising Series A funding. Molly has a passion for bringing leading-edge solutions to market, finding the right opportunity by working with prospective clients. It sounds like it's a Monday already. Working with her team members is always pushing them beyond what's considered obvious. She's an alum from the Tulane University, an audiobook enthusiast, and a devotee of the great state of Maine. Molly, thanks for being with us as well.
Thank you.
So, Amy, let's talk about, we're going to go through and talk to each of you initially, just to give our audience an idea of what your businesses are. Amy, let's start with you. Can you talk to us a little bit about HealthBridge?
Sure, I'd love to. So we are a new type of employee benefit. We are right in the middle of healthcare. We help employees manage and pay for their out-of-pocket. So those co-payments, co-insurance, and deductibles. We have 45 employees. We're headquartered in Grand Rapids, but our whole tech team is up in Traverse City. And so we've been in market for a year now, and all of our market is in Michigan. So it's been a very interesting time.
Excellent. Matt, talk about Refraction AI a little bit.
Sure. So Refraction AI, we're a robotics company that facilitates last mile delivery. And so we build and deploy robots that carry right now food and groceries from merchants to people's homes. And so in our long-term vision, what we hope to do is to automate lots of that part of the supply chain to hopefully build a safer and more sustainable way of doing last mile delivery than the current models.
Great. Thank you. Molly, talk about AdAdapt and what you're doing.
Yeah, so AdAdapted is a mobile advertising company. We specialize in helping CPG brands, so big brands like that you see sold in a grocery store, things like P&G, General Mills, Johnsonville, those types of brands. We help them find their shoppers in the apps that they're using to shop. So more and more people are using their mobile devices either to plan what they're going to buy in store or even actually make purchases through e-commerce delivery. We have technology that allows us to advertise to those shoppers and then put things directly onto their list or cart based on the preferences that we can see from how they shop.
So what I think is very interesting to have all three of you is you're really all affected by this crisis. I mean, you've got a role that your organization kind of plays in all of this. I definitely want to get to that, but my first question with this is, as entrepreneurs, this is not really your first crisis, I would assume. Talk to us a little bit maybe about how different this current pandemic is with past crisis that you've been involved in. Who'd like to tackle that first? Matt, how about you?
Sure, I'll jump in. We were talking about this with the panelists before jumping on the live stream here, but I think one of the big differences is really around our ability to plan. And so if you talk to people, particularly around the 2008 recession, one of the things that struck me as very different about this is that, we had a pretty clear idea what had happened pretty quickly. It took a little while to figure it out, but it was an understanding of exactly what had unraveled. And so I think one of the advantages of that over this is it gives you a very specific way of trying to address it in your long-term planning and the way you think about your business and the way you think about growth and the way you think about trying to weather it. And so unlike that, we've seen this massive drop in consumer spending, and then coupled with a huge rise of unemployment, and nobody can tell us whether that's going to disappear when this ends, when that might end, and what that looks like. And I think one of the big challenges is that unlike other natural disasters, our scientific modeling around this is much more limited, right? So we have models that can make some predictions, but what it depends on is human behavior. And that is a thing that we have learned over long periods of time that is very hard to model. And so I think the biggest challenge we face in anyone trying to make any plans, not just on the business side, but also in the personal life or, should you buy a house, any of these things, is that without the ability to predict some of the trends that are coming up and how drastically different they could be, I think it's very difficult to make long-term plans.
Yeah. Molly, how about you? How is this compared to past issues maybe that you've experienced as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So I haven't been an entrepreneur long enough to have weathered another storm, but actually it was the 2008 crisis that led me to becoming an entrepreneur. So I was on track to be in doing sales for architecture studios, things like engineering, developers, those things. And in 2008, what I saw happen was it decimated the whole industry. So people that I knew had been working for 50 years and were on a very sort of traditional track were losing their jobs. Businesses that had been around for 100 years were falling apart. So at that moment, I realized what I had thought was really stable, what I thought was really safe and secure actually wasn't. And it led me to opening my horizons a little bit. I remember I met Dick Beaton, who was a founder of Amplifinity, and I remember him saying that he had at least 18 months of runway because they had just gotten some funding, and that was about as sure of a bet as anybody could make back at that time. So it was an opportunity for me at that time, even though it was very scary at the moment. Amy,
what about you?
Well, 18 months of runway, what I wouldn't give for that right now. I'm 50, but I only started being an entrepreneur when I was 40. So I've only been in this game for 10 years. Prior to this, I worked for large organizations. I worked for law firms. And I looked at crises very differently than I do today. And I was just saying to someone the other day, you know, I definitely have a different seat on the bus. And not only for this crisis do I have a different seat, but I own the bus company. So I just have a whole new respect for small businesses, for entrepreneurs. It's, you have a completely different set of optics coming into something like this with the uncertainty.
So when we talked prior to putting this webinar together, I was very fortunate to actually get this group, because you are, like I said a couple of minutes ago, you've all been really impacted by this pandemic, kind of in a positive way a little bit. I mean, certainly, you know, Matt, we can, you know, there's been a number of different articles concerning now robotic delivery, you know, and so forth. And Molly, you talked a little bit about how really grocery stores have to kind of change their sort of their branding and their message. I would love to hear from each of you as far as how this has sort of impacted your actual business. Amy, how about in the health arena? I would imagine, you know, you're working harder than ever.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't want to be tone deaf and say that there's these big silver linings. There's a lot of people suffering out there. So I just want to say that in the very beginning. But we do talk a lot at HealthBridge about how this almost feels like a living commercial for why we exist. So when people have these huge out of pockets and very little in their pocket, they're functionally uninsured. And I just read a Gallup poll, it just came out yesterday, and they said that 1 in 7 people are reporting that they're not seeking treatment for key symptoms of COVID because of the out-of-pocket cost. And that's exactly what we do. We try to give people financial security. So I guess, I mean, for us, the silver lining is that we've been validated on many levels. And then also it's inspired us, because it's very easy in the daily grind to forget why you're doing things. And we all have this common goal of getting people access to excellent and affordable healthcare. So we've renewed that and refreshed that as a team. There's a lot of other little things that have come out of this that are going to be good for our business going forward. But I would say that that's probably the best thing for us, this renewed sense of value in what we're doing.
Right. Molly, what about you? What about the, I mean, like I said, you talked offline about the messaging and how that's kind of changed. What sort of things are going on within your organization now because of this crisis?
Yeah, so we sell exclusively to CPG companies, or almost exclusively to CPGs and then grocery retailers. CPGs are having a year. If anything, they can't keep up with supply or keep the shelves stocked and inventory. And retailers, grocers are some of the only businesses that are doing really well during this time. At least in terms, I mean, they have, believe me, in the same way Amy said, I don't want to be tone deaf. They have an immense amount of struggles going on, and there's a lot of complicated issues about safety and keeping their employees safe. But when it comes to just revenue coming through the door, it's there. AdAdapted has really unique data about how people shop. So we can see how planning changed as soon as the pandemic hit. We can see what was continuing to be put on grocery lists, what wasn't, how people were increasing their trips to the stores, what they were buying, when they were buying it. And that put us in a really unique position to share data that was sort of overlooked in the past. The other thing that we're doing is we're able to put things onto people's carts, right, as they're shopping. We can help with that. And more like e-com has been talked about in the grocery world for the last couple of years, but the explosion that's happening now because people are altering how they shop for groceries, we're sort of right in the intersection of what's going on there.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious. I think what you might talk about, certainly with delivery and to Molly's point about putting things in people's carts, and with folks, with companies like Instacart and others that are really probably overwhelmed. I know that firsthand just by scheduling some of these, right? talk about, though, the little bit of the importance now, sort of the awareness of what you do is probably taking center stage.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting you put this panel together because I think it touches on a bunch of the issues that are kind of converging right now. So for us, we've thought a lot about how the current delivery models work, and particularly around food and groceries. And what's been really interesting is we've now seen this intersection of the health concerns of that and sort of how we've been doing it in the past. So you mentioned Instacart, and then you can think about DoorDash or Grubhub or Uber Eats or any of the big players that do this, and the mechanism they use to do the actual work that happens is gig economy workers. And that intersects with two things. They lack minimum wages and healthcare benefits and all the things that we would associate with staple jobs. And we've become increasingly reliant on them to fulfill delivery orders because of sort of the cost model that's been built up around that. And so it's created this real problem for the industry in that now there's a massive surge in demand, and the only mechanism we have to do it is to increase supply on this gig economy side, which does two things. One is that it's hard to fulfill, right? So you'll see that Instacart is unable to keep up with demand because you can't get people on to that platform fast enough. But the second thing, and I think perhaps it gets overlooked in this, is that we have a lot of reverence for medical workers, as we should, right? They play an incredibly important role. We don't clap for grocery store clerks. We don't clap for Instacart drivers. We don't clap for the people that really have no other options. They don't take these jobs because they're the best jobs out there. They take these jobs because that's what is available to them. And as we see the economy tanking, we see an increasing level of desperation that these people put themselves at risk every day to do these jobs. They're not afforded any PPE. They're not afforded these sort of benefits that we would associate with what we've done in the medical sphere. So really, we have taken this as a real cause to undertake and say, look, we think there's a better way of doing this. We think that we can put these employees in safer positions, and we can figure out ways of addressing this really fundamental problem that is that if we need to move things from point A to point B, and there's huge concerns about social distancing, how can we do that? And I think robots is one way of achieving that. So we've been pushing really, really hard to grow and to do as much as we can to deploy as much as possible. And the second piece of that is really that even with contactless delivery, contactless delivery with humans, you have another person in that chain touching things. And that's a person that is touching and interacting with many people through the course of the day. So if you think about our older or more vulnerable residents in any place, they have no option. They can't go to the grocery store because it's too risky, and they need food. And so ultimately, I think we've taken it on as a very serious challenge to see if we can address that. And so we had a plan to push into grocery. We did that much earlier than expected, simply because it seems like a necessity now.
I got to imagine that all of your plans have been disrupted, and everybody's been able to hopefully kind of pivot into sort of new directions a little bit. Let's address, the three of you are founders, you're entrepreneurs, you've been faced with a hard task of always fundraising for your business. And so in light of everything that's kind of going on, what do you think will change as far as the face of fundraising? How will that sort of change moving forward for entrepreneurs that are kind of watching this at the moment? Maybe give some different thoughts on that, and maybe some advice moving forward. I know it's a magic ball, crystal ball kind of thing, but I think folks would like to hear what you think as far as the face of fundraising going. Who'd like to grab that first? Amy, you're kind of smiling, so I'm gonna ask you to take that one on first.
Sure. Well, where I was when this all hit. So we're always fundraising, and I've been doing this with a few different companies over the years, and now with HealthBridge. And we were just putting out our convertible note, $10 million, the day I'm sending people home with their computers. And it was a very scary time. So I've had a lot of time to reflect. Obviously, we've probably quadrupled our fundraising efforts right now. And just a few things: get money when you can get it early, get it often. I've been told that for years by VCs, and it is true. You don't wait until the last minute, and I'm not saying that we did, but you just never know when opportunities will dry up for funding. And I think I'll leave some of the comments for others, but I have been thinking a lot about institutional investors versus high wealth individuals. So in the early round, so we're moving into our C round. In the early rounds, I had a nice mix, but it was mostly high wealth individuals. And the B round was more institutional investors. And I'll tell you, I'm really glad that I have my institutional investors. My individual investors in times like this, it's all about wealth preservation. This is not their full-time job investing, and they've had to pull back. And it's really the institutional investors whose business it is to invest other people's monies. If they're not investing, they don't have a job. And the other thing is they usually have invested more, so they're trying to keep their portfolios afloat. So it's been good to be able to go back to them. They have dry powder. So that's something, if you're an entrepreneur out there, make sure that you have a nice mix. So when the well goes a little dry, you've got entities out there who are made for times like this.
Hey guys, I think we were.
Yeah, we're getting Zoom attack, but we'll just ignore that. Hey, Matt, talk to us a little bit about the face of fundraising. What do you think moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting challenge, right? So, I don't think fundraising is ever fun or easy, but I think one of the things about it that is important is I think you need to figure out ways of trying to structure the funding you need to achieve the goals that you want with your business, right? And that storytelling and that planning is something that's, the same now as it was before. And I think we've been really focused on trying to tell a convincing story and also trying to build a model that we think we can grow and expand with. And so in a lot of ways, I think this fundraising process has been intense because you are trying to deal with all of the uncertainty associated with the future. But to kind of the panelist's earlier points, that's always the case, right? Like you're always trying to scramble. You're always trying to get the money you need to make this happen. And I think you're always trying to figure out in a really uncertain environment, right? So if startup for certain, I don't think any of us would have had any problems or challenges over the last couple of years. So I think for us, one of the things that's been really important is to figure out how things advance. And then secondly, also to think about what are the things that we want to build and what do we need to do that. And so it's a more challenging fundraising environment than it was 6 months ago. But I think, everybody's trying to rise to that challenge and do what they need to do to make this work.
Yeah. Molly, anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I mean, I think it was covered by the other panelists. I guess what we're seeing right now is whenever there's a shift like this, there's going to be a huge opportunity. I think one of the things that we're trying to be conscious of is not everybody is equipped to take that opportunity right now because of all the hardships that are going on, and there's things that are going on with people's families or their own businesses. And I think it's totally okay to take a step back and sort of think about whether you can, now is the right time to raise money or.
I'm unmuted. Oh, fuck.
So.
Yep. Keep going.
Sorry.
This is the perils of Zoom, apparently. We're trying to ignore it, but keep going. I'm sorry about that, Molly.
Oh, it's okay. I've never had this I've seen it talked about. I've never
me neither.
had this happen. I don't know. So yeah, I guess when you think about the same opportunities that entrepreneurs can take right now, there's also opportunities for funders. It'll be interesting. Like I know that there's still investors out there that have money that are looking for ways to fund companies, and they're looking for these types of opportunities. It's just trying to find whether you're poised for it or not.
Yeah. Let's move on a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more of offensive sort of measures, as kind of we're moving forward. Let's talk about maybe some tips and advice you can guys give some entrepreneurs as they're continuing to seek funding. They've got their business idea. Talk to us about the fundraising part and really managing their business during this, slowing the burn rate, thinking strategically, moving forward. What kinds of advice would you folks like to offer up? Who'd like to, Matt, you want to start first with that?
Sure. Look, I think the thing that we really want to do, and that I think I would recommend others try is, is to make a plan as to, where you want to be, and then try to plan for all the contingencies. And so, I don't know what the next 6 months is going to hold. I have no idea what's going to happen, but we're trying to do the best we can to read those trends. And that's what we've been doing before this. And that's what we're going to try to do after it. So I've been really focused on thinking about, okay, what are the best case scenarios for us? What are the scenarios that, the biggest growth that we can imagine, the best way to leverage all the opportunities. And then what are the other things on the other side that will keep the employees that have kind of trusted themselves to work with us safe and, keep them employed in this really uncertain time. And so we just try to balance those two goals, right? We're trying to grow as fast as we can, but also I don't want to get ourselves in a position to get over our skis. And then good people that have kind of thrown their lot in with us are put at risk. And so, I think everybody understands the risk associated with starting a startup, but it feels particularly acute now to make sure that we try to protect all the employees that have really, that are doing their best and are really trying hard to make this work. So we've been, aggressively keeping those conversations going with VCs, talking to them, making sure that we stay in communication with people that we'd spoken to before, and trying to understand where they're coming from as well. What are they seeing? What are they worried about? What are their LPs concerned about? And trying to make sure that everybody knows what's going on.
Yeah. Molly, what do you think? What kind of advice would you like to offer up?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for us, we're looking for what's going to happen a year from now, 2 years from now, trying to predict the trends without actually having a crystal ball, knowing that we're going to come out on the other side of this and things are fundamentally going to change in terms of how people shop, how people communicate, how people advertise, like everything. There's shifts in sort of every aspect of society right now. I think there's going to be real opportunities to do good. I think there's going to be real opportunities to find ways to make revenue that didn't even exist before. So it's about sort of taking care of yourself, taking care of your employees, and trying to position yourself to be able to take advantage in a good way, right? To take advantage of those shifts. Without a doubt, like I know this with absolute certainty, there's definitely going to be people that sort of figure things out and that are able to, whether it's do social good or earn revenue or whatever your primary motivations are, they're going to come out stronger on the other end of this. It's just who can see it and who can execute on it, given the sort of chaos that we're seeing right now.
So Amy, let's kind of pivot a little bit and talk about sort of Molly into the teams, and all of you are working with your teams, and let's talk about the culture within your own sort of organizations. Now everybody is remote working, and how's that working for everybody? I mean, if you have a new appreciation for maybe not working alone like this, but I mean, how's this changed sort of the culture within your organizations? Amy, why don't you talk about that first?
Oh yeah, we are definitely going through a transition. So we had 2 offices and we were kind of stacked like cordwood. So we were meeting constantly about where we were going to move to. And then all of a sudden everybody's working from home. We have 2 discrete groups. We had the TC group and the Grand Rapids group, and we were always trying to make sure that we were on the same page. Now everybody's home. So the dynamics are very different. So we've had to institute a few things to keep us a lot closer. The teams are now all meeting daily. So our exec, just for example, so our exec team used to have a big Thursday morning meeting, and it's kind of a slog. Sometimes I have to say it would start at 8:30 and we'd end, by 10:30 or 11. And now what we do instead is promptly every morning, we all get on the line and we all say we love it now. We know what everybody's doing. It's a real quick touch base. We don't have the long Thursday morning meetings, and then they can all go out. They usually will plan their department meetings right after that. So they're fresh out of the exec team meeting. They go to our team, their teams, and report what's going on. Remember, we have 45 people. So that's a pretty big team. And the other thing that we've been doing a lot of is we use Slack a ton. So we're constantly in touch. We make people keep the videos on so we can feel like we see each other on a regular basis. But it has been it's been hard. I think the other thing that's happening is when you are alone, you work at a different speed. So we are fatigued. Our days are 12, 13, 14 hours, then you shut your laptop because it's uninterrupted. We're getting a ton more work done, but I will say it's, you are exhausted by Wednesday or Thursday. You feel like you've worked 2 weeks. So there's a pace to it. There's an interaction to it. Everything's different, but in a lot of ways, my teammates say we kind of like it.
Yeah. Molly, I'm sure you want to be in seclusion forever. I know you've got a small one at home. I'm just kidding. You probably want to get out of there as quickly as possible. But how have you transitioned into this and sort of your team? Do you foresee once we come out of this that you'll have sort of a modified work schedule of sorts?
I don't know. We've talked about that a lot. I think there's half the team that really wants to just jump right back into whatever is normal. And then there's other teammates that really enjoy working from home. I thought that I liked working from home more than it turns out that I do. One of the things that I have found interesting, like Amy was saying, is this fatigue, this sort of Zoom fatigue. I would think that I would be way more productive if I could just stay at home and stay steady and look at the computer. I think there's something about not breaking up your day and not having interaction where you're walking around and talking to people and meeting with people, that I found myself more exhausted, I guess more fatigued, like more burned out by the end of the day than I would be even if I had a small commute and was out and about. I don't think that that's insurmountable though either. I could imagine we keep doing this for another year, and of course, like, we're all going to get used to it and we're all going to have our own routines. I don't think it'll ever go back 100% to exactly what it was, let's say in January, but it would be nice, I think this is a little extreme, at least for my liking.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I thought that I used to like working, I do like working remote, but I think there's a difference, at least for me, from working remote versus working from home. I think there's definitely that difference. I'm the kind of guy that can sit in the library, headphones, and I can get a ton of work done that way. At home, it's I'm getting purple squirrel syndrome a little bit, looking out the window and get distracted pretty quick. What about you, Matt? Are you finding the same thing?
Yeah, look, there's been so many changes to the way that we've been working, and we build a physical product, so it's quite challenging to do that remotely. And so we've had to kind of really adapt. And so we have people going in shifts, people working different parts of the building, that kind of thing. But it's been really hard. So I am looking forward to being able to open back up, just because manufacturing is difficult to do without people in a place. But to this point about Zoom working, I think it's been really interesting. Like, the notion that we would be more effective if we didn't have to go to the office or we weren't distracted, I think is twofold, right? There's some tasks that work really well that way. So I get some things done much faster than I would if I was in the office being distracted. But the flip side of that is that there's some tasks that work much better when you're in the office and you can able to communicate quickly with people. And so I've really struggled with the challenges of some of the group work that we would normally do, doing that without being able to physically be in the same place. And so ultimately, I think it's about flexibility, right? So it's great that we have tools to do this, but I don't think anybody wants it to be that we are forced to not be able to meet up and do things together when we need to. And so ultimately, I'm looking forward to that flexibility coming back, and hopefully some of the things that we've learned from this period will be useful moving forward. But I don't think anybody wants us to be forced into one way of working, because certainly that's not the way forward.
Definitely the one area that we should address as we kind of wrap things up. And I apologize that we're not going to do get questions from the audience for some obvious reasons. I think we got Zoom bombed, and so there's a first for everything. So we're not going to engage in any of that, unfortunately. But let's talk about the mental health aspect of maybe what everybody is sort of going through. This is a big hit to everybody's wellness. And so I'd be curious how each of you are dealing with the sort of the mental health aspect, and really how are you working with your teams through this? I mean, how how are they managing through it, and are you doing some things differently that sort of ease that issue for them? Molly, what about you? How are you dealing with all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're trying to just be really conscious of it. So we use the team structure that we have in place to make sure that everybody is talking to their team on a daily basis, and whether it's jumping on a Slack call or jumping on a Zoom call. Then we're making sure that we have touch points, you know, throughout the week, at least once a week, where there's some sort of like Zoom happy hour or something sort of fun. And then there's just a lot of talking to managers, talking to people, saying, how is your team feeling? You know, it's rough out there in terms of like sales and market. There's jobs within AdAdapted that, even though we're doing well as a company, have changed because people are no longer able to go out and meet with people and do that. So we're trying to make sure that we're conscious of how people feel about that, and what that might do to their own professional struggles, right? Or their own personal idea of what they should be doing on a day-to-day basis. So I definitely can't sit here and say that we have the answers. I think what we're trying to do is make sure that we're open to the questions and thinking that you know, thinking about how this could be different and how it affects people differently.
Amy, you've got a fairly large team. How are you managing with all of this?
Yeah, I guess I'll just give you two examples of things that we've done to try to keep spirits up a little bit. The first one is we were probably one of the early companies to send everybody home, and we have been very transparent with our team that we're not going to rush to come back in. There's a lot of people who are very nervous about coming back into our offices, so we said there's no rush, and we're going to do it on the right timeline, on the right terms, and we're going to do it to keep everybody safe. So safety is a huge theme. And then the other one, this may sound a little odd, but we did do some layoffs early, and we did some furloughs, and we were very transparent about the other financial cuts we made across the country, across our book of contracts. And that was helpful to everybody because we were able to tell them how much longer our runway was. So I think when people know that, and we even all took pay cuts and we gave people options and all those things. So the more you tell them, the more you let them look behind the curtain at what you're doing to keep the place afloat, I think the better they feel when they talk to their spouses about whether or not they're going to have a job in another quarter. We're able to tell them that we've got the money, and they've been grateful for it.
Yeah, definitely communication, transparency is key during these times. Matt, anything you want to add to what?
I would just echo everybody else's statements. You know, I think it's a really tough time for everybody, and so it's just trying to be receptive to that. I think in the best of times, startups are very stressful, and this is that times 5. And so I think it's understanding and managing that, managing your employees, managing your own stress so that you can be the best leader that you can be. I think that's an important piece of this that people need to think about, because I think if you get too stressed out or too sort of afraid, it can be difficult to bring the compassion and the understanding that you need to help your employees, mental health. And I think people sense that, right? And so I think it's an important thing. It can often feel like it's a job where you have to sort of subvert your own feelings to make sure that you're sort of leading from the front. But I think it's just important to just keep track of where you are and make sure that, you're checking in with yourself so that you can be the best leader that you can be for everybody that needs you to be 100% and not something else.
Well, I think this is probably a good point to end on. I really want to thank all of you, Amy, Molly, Matt, for being on today and chatting with our attendees, and so that they can learn more about what you're going through as not only as we go through this crisis, but just really as entrepreneurs, what you're dealing with on sort of a daily basis. And so I appreciate 3 of you taking time today. Thank everybody else for watching. Again, I'm Ara Topouzian with Michigan Venture Capital Association. For more information about MVCA, you can go online to michiganvca.org. Until next time, thank you very much. Panel, thank you again.
Everybody.
Stay safe and well, and we'll talk soon. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.